I said Grunt Fantasy is ruining Helldivers 2, but never explained what that phrase means in the first place. I'm gonna go ahead and let Pilestedt, the former CEO, do that right now.
So Helldivers 2 was originally envisioned, this is the original hypothesis, is that Helldivers is a co-op action shooter where you play as the evil guys in the galaxy, so your stormtroopers or whatever it might be in pop culture. And how would you fare as one of the extras in the background? Like, you know, when they try to breach the cell block in Star Wars, and the first stormtrooper through the door, he of course gets shot in the chest by Han Solo. And that's the question of, would you do better climbing into that room trying to capture the bad guys, that are trying to take over your lovely Death Star? And then also, would you be able to survive in a galactic war without plot armor to protect you? It's really the question that we ask with Helldivers. Our design pillars, which is that we put the fantasy first. And what we mean by fantasy first is that if we say that you're supposed to be a mobile infantry grunt in the Starship Troopers, we need to ensure that it feels like being the mobile infantry grunt in Starship Troopers. So it means that we have constraints set already. Can a Starship Troopers mobile infantry jump 2 meters up into the air? No, they cannot. Not in the movies, at least, and not without assistance. In that case, we'd have to adhere to that. Ensure that we keep the fantasy safe throughout the entire journey and not compromise on it when things get tough.
The reason why I'm saying Grunt Fantasy is ruining Helldivers 2 is because that phrase has become the executioner of enjoyment. When you have these minor niche mechanics that are fun to do, but they're not overly realistic, they have to go. They cannot remain for any stint of time, since it does not appeal to the whole Grunt Fantasy. We have reached a point where player creativity is not being embraced, and instead is getting hunted down and removed at the fastest rate the devs can manage, which goes against the entirety of what Johan Pilestedt said a year ago in reference to how the studio views player creativity.
We also knew that we wanted to make a game that lets and forces the players to be creative. And when we talk about creativity in the games industry, we generally attribute it to things like Minecraft, Roblox, and so forth. But creativity also exists in action games. And it's the creativity of coming up with solutions at a moment's notice. And to allow for creativity, you need to have game mechanics that are complex. They need to be consistent. And players need to have the freedom to do what they want within a system. And with that, you'll be able to see crazy plays that players do. And that is a form of creativity that's dear to us.
As far as I can tell, Johan Pilestedt very much cared about creativity, but he has since then stepped down as the CEO into the CCO role, and I don't know if he stepped down from that role as well and is focusing on different games for Arrowhead, because that'd be the only thing that makes sense to me, given how the trajectory of the game's focus has changed so much. There is a new CEO, Shams Georgiani, and he may play a role in the shift in focus, but I don't know for certain. This is what he had to say on a couple of things, though.
The real challenges has been for us to maintain our integrity. The slogan for the studio is a game for everyone is a game for no one. So we did not set out to design Helldivers for a wide audience. We made it for a niche audience. And our belief is that if you make an uncompromising game experience for a very specific audience, you have the ability to resonate far outside of it. Now, we've seen this happen many times in video games and even outside the games. From software games bucked the trend. They were very brutally hard, where every other game was about hand-holding, and that's, you know, an entire genre, and a lot of success has been born out of that. Escape from Tarkov is the same thing. It bucks a lot of the PvP trends.
I want to compare notes right now. Your game accidentally became a monumental success, garnering a massive audience, and you want to forgo all of that and focus on the core player base in hopes that they can resonate with your message, your vision, and then you can regain a giant audience that you already had, because maybe the game's not as difficult as you want it to be. Because you mentioned difficulty. You didn't say it specifically, but you're talking about games that are difficult and catering to a niche audience. And given the changes y'all have made to the game recently, it seems as though you're pushing towards that niche audience as well.
We did not make Helldivers for 6 million Call of Duty players. We absolutely didn't. But we do now have 6 million Call of Duty players who've bought our game.
Oh, wow.
And they are interested in different things compared to, say, the audience that comes from Escape from Tarkov or Arma, which were some of the more, influential games in that kind of game. So the summer of pain, or whatever we want to call it, was painful in part because it was hard for us to reconcile how to stay true to the studio fundamentals while dealing with the business realities of having so many different voices screaming at us. Yeah. And you kind of, I'll do a big GDC talk about this at some point, but to kind of boil it down, any modern game understands that their audience consists of many different segments, and it's very hard to give everyone everything they want at the same time.
I've heard this talking point way too much from folks at Arrowhead, because essentially they're saying that they can't make a game for everyone. After all, their slogan is a game for everyone is a game for no one, which I think at this point is rather self-defeating, since you had a game with a 94% player retention rate after a whole month, and that only went down drastically once you made changes that ruined the experience or took away from it. And then that keeps happening because you make a lot of the same mistakes. So that slogan prevents you from actually learning from your mistakes in the first place.
But the thing that had us kind of, lost was that we got away from the core fantasy. The box, it literally says on the box, kill monsters with overpowered weapons. And in our kind of strive to find balance, I think we ended up balancing the game in a way where the core fantasy kind of died. And that's when we got the backlash.
If you understand that making weapons not fun to use hurts the core fantasy, why would you then make new enemies that aren't fun to shoot at or engage with? Because that also hurts the fantasy just it's the same way, but it's a different form now. Because we have Leviathans that are meant to be ignored, Warstrivers that require anti-tank if you want to kill it in a decent fashion, or you can use Heavy Pin and probably die in the process. Rupture Strain that got removed because they just weren't good. They weren't a good faction. But they have medium pin for the head whenever you have a light pin issue going on. And then you got Rupture Spewers that can get close to you and insta-kill you because the thing that made them do less damage, the fix for that, got broken recently. Meat Bobs are bullet sponges, and I know you can kill them quick with certain weapons, guys. I've made the videos on how to do it. But it doesn't take away from the fact that they're not fun to kill. They just take so much damage, 6,000 HP. Which is just below a Battle Titan, for a mob that you can have 4 in a single patrol. And then there's other changes that happened not too long ago, making Impalers, Chargers, and Charger Behemoth legs, once they're stripped, the meat of their leg, tankier. These are things that make weapons not as fun to use.
We went down to like 30 in user score, and usually that's the death knell for a game, right? But we came back from that. And then we fumbled with balancing and the focus for the game. And that sent us all the way down to 19%, I think was the lowest.
Oh, wow.
And like games that get 19% user score do not generally recover. And maybe the lowest point during my tenure so far, there's going to be many more, I think, was during the summer when everyone was away. Our user score was down to 19. And I had to get on a call with Herman Hulst and explain to the CEO of Sony why things were in the state they were and what we were doing to kind of recover. And I had to say the awkward, truth that there is nothing we can do in the immediate short term to resolve this. But in the long term, we have plans that will get us back on track. And we issued a 60-day plan that put us back on the track. And we did an update and an update and an update. And I was very much inspired by No Man's Sky and the team over there that had a similar kind of journey. Very hyped, then bombed, and then they put their head to the grindstone and just updated the game. And since September, we've been on a very good trajectory, but we've been just pendulating between it's so over and we're so back, and it's become a meme within the community.
I can say with certainty that is not my favorite meme, because unfortunately, we're back to needing a 60-day plan, which wouldn't even fix the performance issues according to the devs, and that is worrisome. Honestly, the game is in the worst state imaginable from a performance perspective. They are working on fixing a lot of the more glaring issues, and hopefully the balance pass, the main thing that I'm focused on in this video, has a lot of fruit to bear or something. It's positive. That's what I'm looking forward to. Now, speaking of balance issues, Your Honor, I request permission to not be confused. Dismissed? Understood. I call the PS5 box out to the stand. On the back it says, spread democracy with overpowered weapons. Just above it, it mentions, become a hero, become a legend, become a Helldiver. How can a grunt, average Joe, run-of-the-mill soldier become a legend? Because you have such crazy weapons, in some cases, that allow that to be possible. You are not just a grunt. You are Super Earth's finest, dang near, as far as I can tell. And you go into a planet, or at least a section of a planet, and liberate outposts, decimating aliens, bugs, and bots alike. And that's what makes Helldivers 2 so unique, because it's both visually stunning, and the complexity of the enemies in terms of weak spots, and I'd even say durable damage and other factors, can make the game far more interesting, but only if the devs make it a point. And for a time, they didn't. And so ensued the 60-day plan, which has been talked about a lot so far. We'll go ahead and have Michael E., pretty cool guy from Sweden, explain what that is.
Hey everybody, I'm Johan Pilestedt.
And I'm Michael Eriksson.
Today we're taking a look at the conclusion of the 60-day promise.
Indeed.
Indeed-o. Let's go back in time and let's reimagine the time when this commitment was made. What happened? What led into it?
We could see in the period following launch that we did have some weapons that were overrepresented. So players were playing with specific weapons more than others. And what we ended up doing in some of the cases was that we nerfed these weapons to make the weapons, like, to balance them a bit more.
And bring them into line with the rest of the loadouts.
Exactly. And in hindsight, that was maybe not the smartest thing that we could have done, because what often ended up happening was that we took weapons that players loved and we made them more boring, right? We had to take a step back and we had to look at what we were doing and what decisions we were taking. So that's why we made the 60-day commitment. So the 60-day commitment was our way of saying that, okay, we hear you, we also feel it, we also see it, we want to address the biggest issues that we have in the game right now, and we want to get back on track to make sure that we deliver on the core promise of Helldivers. That was the commitment, but we're a live service game, so we will keep updating the game for a long time, and we'll keep building on the game. And hopefully now that we have more of our ducks in a row, we can do that while also staying true to what made Helldivers 2 great in the first place, right? Staying true to our core vision.
Even during the 60-day plan, one of the more pivotal moments in the game's history, trying to correct the mistakes they've been making for the past few months, they mentioned the core vision that I can only assume is referring to the Grunt Fantasy. How well can you fare against these aliens as a Starship Trooper, as a grunt? And that's why I believe that phrase, Grunt Fantasy, is the executioner of enjoyment in Helldivers 2.
When we make games, we always focus on believability. And believability is hard to quantify, but my best explanation for this is, if you remember in Game of Thrones, where the dragons are attacking King's Landing, Queen's Landing? What? Fake fan. Anywho, and this guy gets on the ballista and decides to shoot down one of these dragons. I mean, the problem isn't that there's dragons in Game of Thrones. That is within the realm of believability of what's established within the show. But that this guy managed to snipe a dragon 1,000 meters away with a large crossbow with no sights. That really gets to me. Like, is that really believable? And the same thing goes in Lord of the Rings, where the troll stabs Frodo, but he survives due to the mithril jacket. And it's like, but how strong is that troll and how small is that hobbit? Isn't that mithril going to cause him to be in a hydraulic press? So believability is important for us. Like, it needs to make sense within the internal consistency of the world that we built.
Y'all focus on the core vision so much that the game is in need of dire changes, sometimes a 60-day plan, maybe even a 120-day plus plan. And then you end up having to fix all the things you've been doing to the game, so I don't understand the purpose. Why mess it up in the first place, doing the things that you should know that people just aren't going to really mess with and enjoy, to then have to correct and waste dev time fixing? Why not lean more into the action aspect of your game, instead of trying to reduce the APM, so to speak, and make it feel slower for no good reason? Like, there are some pretty cool things you can do, and one of the biggest draws to me is the intricacy of the enemies and finding loadouts that you can take that can handle various different things. And I would be so down to play in a 4-man group if the game encouraged it. Right now, the way the difficulty scales, solo is the most challenging, and then duo. I recommend not catering to the glaze divers who lie to themselves and to you guys about what's actually fun in the game. They won't pay your bills, they won't keep the lights on, they'll just lead you astray. every single time, as they've done for the past year and a half. So maybe find new places to get feedback from that don't put you down the exact same road constantly. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a good day.
What made Helldivers 2 a smash hit?